Folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Greer City Council meeting. This meeting is called and convened on the 28th day of 2014. We are assembled after having missed one of our regularly scheduled meetings due to inclement weather, but this is a regularly scheduled meeting. Having called the meeting to order, I am going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And you know what? I'm not either. This is a month behind. Never mind.
Public hearing.
All right. Sorry, let's start all over again. How about that? You want to do that? This is indeed a regularly scheduled Greer City Council meeting, but before we proceed with that, we have a public hearing this evening. This is the Greenville County Program Year 2014. This is our annual action plan for the City of Greer. The City of Greer participates in the Greenville County Community Development Block Grant, which is commonly known as CDBG program, and the Home Investment Partnership Program funded by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The Greenville County Redevelopment Authority prepares its annual action plan and is presenting that and will present that. This is a public hearing called and convened for this evening on Tuesday, February the 25th, and we will call the meeting to order. Mr. Martin Livingston is with us this evening. Martin is the Executive Director of the Greenville County Redevelopment Authority and will make the presentation on behalf of the authority this evening. With that, we will call the public meeting to order and turn the floor over to Mr. Livingston. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Danner, council members for the City of Greer, and city staff, as well as residents of Greer. The Greenville County Redevelopment Authority's and board and staff is pleased to announce the funding availability for CDBG and home funds. CDBG is Community Development Block Grant funds and can be used for many activities that qualify, projects that benefit an entire neighborhood, such as sidewalks, public works, infrastructure activities, projects that related to housing, such as owner-occupied rehabilitation, public services activities that support nonprofit activities in the neighborhoods and in the City of Greer, public facilities such as improvements to community centers, as well as projects to eliminate slums and blight, such as code enforcement and demolition. Home program funds or home partnership program funds fund activities that address affordable housing, such as new construction, affordable rental, as well as owner-occupied rehabilitation. Beginning July 1st, the City of Greer is estimated to receive $434,000 in CDBG funds, and as well as $100,000 in home funds. For CDBG funds, you're getting a substantial amount of estimated program income. For CDBG, program income is generated from loans that are provided for projects, and the repayment of those loans generate program income, as well as home funds. You have program income generated as well. GCRA is in a unique position where the funds we receive, we provide loans to developers, nonprofits, and homeowners that are interested in making repairs. That allows us to continue the programs and fund additional activities in neighborhoods. What I'd like to do is to go through a presentation on some of the information on the consolidated plan, annual action plan, as well as some of the activities that benefit CDBG and home funds can implement. The annual action plan process is a process required by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, primarily to receive comments and public comments, as well as public official comments on activities that would benefit the community. Greenville County Redevelopment Authority is required to prepare a 5-year plan, and in that plan is the annual action plan, and every year we receive an allocation from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The 5-year plan runs from program year 2010 which begins July 1st, 2010 to 2014, which is June 30th, 2015. That's the program year. So this will be your final year in this 5-year action plan, and then a new consolidated plan will need to be made as part of that process next year. We have provided you with a resolution and includes a budget of potential activities. Some of these activities were discussed with the city administrator as well as assistant administrator. They included all the entire activities that are available for your total funding, which should total between CDBG and home funds about $534,000. We see that a majority of the activities allocated based on specific activities that would take place throughout the coming year. And I can answer any questions you may have throughout this presentation, so you can stop me if you see something and you have a question about those activities. Although we've allocated these activities for the purpose of submitting the annual action plan, the city administrator can make changes if there's a need arises in any of these activities, except for subrecipients. Subrecipient is fixed based on the CDBG requirement that no more than 15% of your grant amounts be used to support public services. Some of the activities that we've implemented over the years include planning in Needmore. We hope to be able to do some park planning for the Needmore Park area. That would give us some direction on the improvements in that park, in that neighborhood. We've developed the Creekside community off of Bible Brook Road. That neighborhood, formerly a mobile home park that was converted into elderly rental, as well as single-family home ownership. And we see the new sign going up, and we have some new subdivision requirements and neighborhood requirements that will be implemented and submitted to the Planning Commission for their review. Here we have some of the houses on the left that were built, 608 and 612 Ruddy Creek Circle. Those homes have been completed, but what you have here is the progress photos. On your right is an example of an emergency repair project that we completed in the city of Greer. It's a $5,000 grant limit. It's one of the only grant programs we have available for housing, where an owner-occupied home can receive a HVAC system or handicap accessibility or roof or plumbing improvements, and that grant does not have to be paid back, but it's limited to $5,000 every 5 years. These are the completed homes in the Creekside community. I believe one of them is already under contract and getting ready to be sold. We also completed some purchase, rehab, resale, which includes either getting property back under foreclosure or purchasing those properties for rehabilitation and then resale or for affordable rental. And this is one of the improvements that was made. Here's also some new homes that were built, as well as some new street signage, and there will be some street lights in the Creekside community. Some new homes as well for sale in the neighborhood. And this was an owner-occupied rehab that was completed recently. And then we also do what's called a reconstruction or replacement housing for elderly and disabled. We have a rehab advance program that is a loan that doesn't require any monthly or annual payments, but it's a loan that remains on the property for the life of the property owner. As long as it remains their primary residence, they can live in the home and not make any payments on that loan. This was the situation where this house was severely substandard. There's another one we're doing in the Greentown community. I don't know if code enforcement was involved in this one, but code enforcement was involved in the previous one. And we've been able to work with code enforcement closely to make sure that the property owner, the homeowner, complies with the requirements. So
code enforcement was involved in that one too.
I didn't know if they were that, so, but they were involved in the next one in Greentown. And we will work closely with code enforcement to identify situations like this, where elderly and disabled homeowners need a replacement home or need owner-occupied rehabilitation, so we can assist them with the repairs. One of the goals of these programs really is for the ability for elderly to age in place. Also, we have the facade improvement program, and you have previous year's funding. Although not a lot may have been allocated in this budget, you do have previous year's funding, and I think 3 businesses so far since 2012 have taken advantage of it, and I think 2 is still in the pending process. And what the facade program is, it's a $5,000 deferred loan to businesses to make improvements to your downtown facades in your central business districts. It is a 5-year period as well, similar to our unoccupied emergency repair program, and it allows businesses to make improvements in the downtown area. There is a requirement that we must follow, and businesses, before they make the facade improvements, must contact us so that we can go through the HUD required paperwork. Reams and reams of paperwork. And I'll answer any questions that council or folks may have regarding the programs.
Thank you, sir. Council, questions of Mr. Livingston?
How a single-family home selling in Creekside?
They're selling for about $90,000.
Where are we at build out? How many?
This should be a total of 36 units. We started the first 2 this past fall. We started the first 2, and we're building as we sell them. So as we sell 2, we're going to build 2 more.
Others? Mr. Livingston, always good to see you. If you'll remain 1 minute, I do want to open up public hearing. Anybody wish to speak in public forum this evening in regards to the action plan for the city of Greer as presented by the Greenville County Community Development Block Grant? Seeing no one indicate so, I'll ask a second time. And a third. No one's indicated they have any questions or comments in that on that topic or in that regard. We'll close the hearing, and thank you for being with us, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll bring the public hearing to a close, and thank Mr. Livingston for his time and information in that regard. An excellent program, one that prior councils very wisely made some decisions about how that needed to be administered long term, and that has paid us dividends over a number of years and allowed us to engage in projects and to keep that program sustainable for many, many years to come. So we appreciate the insight and foresight of those that sat behind this table many years before us, and for what Mr. Livingston and his staff do in regards to administering that program for us. Having called the public hearing to a close, it'll give me an opportunity to rectify my false start just a little while ago, and so with that, we want to call our meeting to order. This is a regularly scheduled City of Greer Council meeting called and convened on February the 25th, 2014. I don't guess we'll erase that prior date from the record, but we do want to correct that. Having called the meeting to order, I'm going to ask Councilman Lee Dumas, if he would, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then following that, the invocation. If you would, please join me in standing.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we invoke your presence here tonight with us. Thank you as always for this lovely day you've provided. Thank you for this great city. Bless our citizens, those that serve it, and those that lead it. Be with us tonight. Give us wisdom, lead, guide, and direct us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We have time for public comment in regards to items that may appear on the agenda this evening. Ms. Duncan, do we have anybody indicate they wanted to speak in public forum tonight?
No, sir.
With that, then, council will move to the minutes of the council meeting from January 28th. As I mentioned earlier, even in the wrong time frame, we missed one of our regularly scheduled meetings due to inclement weather, but you do have in your packet the minutes from January 28th. They do need to be approved. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved. Second.
Any items of note for the clerk included in those? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Aaronwood,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Ms. Bookert,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Ms. Albert,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. We take time as necessary to recognize employees that have reached a milestone. I'm not sure that we have any this evening that will require our attention, but certainly we do want to recognize our employees and those that are reaching milestones in terms of their service. I am sure Mr. Driggers will give us a full update and reporting of the special effort and work that our city employees put in the city's time of need when we found ourselves facing what potentially could have been a much worse weather condition than it was, but nevertheless we had people out through that entire period, and I think the residents of our city certainly appreciated the time and attention both our roads and facilities got during that time, and certainly for our public safety folks as well too. A recognition that they probably put in longer hours than normal to make sure that we were safe as best we could be, in spite of everything else that was going on beyond our control weather-wise. So to our employees that pitched in and put in the time and effort that was necessary to get us through the weather event, we appreciate it and thank you for your time. We'll move to departmental reports, and those are contained, as always, in your packet there. Information in regards to particular departments is contained in the packet. Questions, as usual, can be directed to the department head or to Mr. Driggers, who can give you additional information. Mr. David Seifert will bring us our financial activity report this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight we're pleased to present to you the financial report for January 2014. As you've reviewed this agenda going into this meeting, I'm sure you've noticed that we've revamped all the financial reports and the summary reports we provide to you. Just want to quickly cover those just to give you a brief understanding of what's presented there. The first report you'll notice is a financial performance summary with quick look indicators, just showing how revenue and expenditures have performed through the month and this month in the prior year, and then showing the current balance there. Following that, for the general fund, are performance graphs for revenue, expenditures, budget percentage remaining, and that's showing monthly information as well as annual information, giving some historical perspective, and then with that year-to-date information being compared to prior year information. So giving a lot more information in that snapshot view that you can hopefully draw some conclusions from in what's presented in that graph. Then following these first two pages, you have the dashboards that you're used to seeing, presenting the dashboard for the current month for revenue and expenditures. Following that, you have the summary graphs for hospitality taxes funds, and then following hospitality tax are the graphs showing the information for the stormwater fund. In reference to the general fund, the revenues for the period ended January 2014, we have revenues of $8,898,731, general fund expenditures of $9,826,373, that is 5% under budget for that period. Referencing the dashboards. We have a revenue benchmark positive variance of $776,549, an expenditure benchmark variance of negative $31,494. Those two combined give us a positive variance of $745,055. And then you'll notice there our cash balance for the period ended January 2014 is $6,115,148. And as always, I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have here, and certainly later. Also in your agenda you have the link to the detailed financial reports that will give you detailed information that generates these graphs.
Council, questions, comments? As always, Mr. Cypher will be glad to help you with that or to give you additional information as necessary. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. This evening we've got Mr. Clay Andrews with us. Clay is with the Upstate Alliance and is here tonight to give us some information regarding the acceptance into the Brookings Institute of the Global Cities Program and how this can possibly help the city of Greer. I am fortunate enough to serve on the core committee that will be involved in this process, and am often asked to be part of different types of efforts in the upstate, but was truly honored to be asked to be part of the core group that will initiate this process and to see it through its full run in terms of 4 years that this process will be going on, and the outcome of this process is going to be that we will develop a strategy for the upstate to increase imports and exports in the upstate, and I think this is a worthy effort that will serve our community and our upstate for a number of years to come, and is exciting to be on this group. I will admit that there is more statistical information than I can consume or understand, and we have only met 3 times. So this is quite the undertaking. Elizabeth Feather there at the Alliance is helping foster us through this process, and a lot of exciting work ahead of us. And Clay, if you want to give us a little overview about what we're in for and how that's going to be a benefit, I would appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It's great to be in Greer. I'm the Public and Investor Relations Director for the Upstate Alliance, and certainly Greer is an investor in our organization. We always like to make sure that we keep you informed. And I would like to thank Mayor Danner for giving you that update, and this concludes my presentation.
Okay.
I can tell you, I don't go to very many meetings where there's someone that informed their council who knows that much about it. So you will see some of this. It seems a little bit, when you see the first part, you'll go, well, of course, some of this makes perfect sense. But as it goes on, there's a little more detail, and more specific to this area. So hopefully you'll get something out of it. But as he said, this is a joint project of the Brookings Institution, which is one of the most prominent and oldest think tanks in the country, and J.P. Morgan Chase, who is a bank, but they do not have any outlets in the upstate, but they do in many of the other areas where this study applies. They're underwriting the cost of it, and that certainly comes up to help us later. But when we start to think about our past, we certainly understand that even going back to the textile era, we had a very strong connection to companies who were from other places. A lot of the companies from Austria and Germany would come over to work on the textile equipment and sell and service the textile equipment originally. So that brought an element into our community that helped enrich us, but it was a little different than what a lot of places saw because they weren't used to having a lot of that offshore investment. So we were already used to that. But if we stop and we take a look at what happens when you have companies from somewhere else invest in your region, there's some things that start to emerge, and some of this has come about through our association with Brookings, and it's worth sharing and understanding and maybe even encouraging. So if we start out by looking on a big level, one of the things we notice is that 95% of the world's population lives outside of the United States, completely outside the United States. So, of course, we think the United States drives the world. Increasingly, that is not the case. A lot of effort, a lot of resources, a lot of money is going to other places like China and Brazil and India. And I know when I've been on recruiting trips in the past, sometimes you talk to a company in Germany and you say, well, where are you looking to expand? And they'll say, well, we're sort of focused on Eastern markets right now. We're looking more toward China and India and in that area. We've already got some places at one time when I was over there in Eastern Europe when that was developed. So they're not looking here as much as they were. And that has implications for us. We need to be operating in that green circle, not in the gold circle. The other thing is the purchasing power that goes with that population. 80% of the purchasing power lies outside the United States. And this trend is only going to accelerate. The other thing you see is that as time goes by, more and more of these places that are developing now are going to grab a larger percentage of the income. So we need to think about that and how it affects the projects that come here. Maybe they're not going to be coming as fast. Maybe they won't be as large. But there's some economic realities that we've noticed through some of this research that we find out. Now, we've just gone through one of the worst recessions we've ever experienced. And what we see is that as a group, the companies that were involved in export activity survived the recession and did better than companies who were not involved as a group in export activity. And when we think about exporting and not exporting, this also applies to the service sector. Traditionally, we think of exports being things that you make like cars and widgets and all like that. But we export a lot of services now too. You think of legal services and accounting services and consulting services, architectural engineering services. Those all count as far as the export tally is concerned now too, because we take that talent overseas and we use it to help create wealth here at home. Well, they're in the same situation. They pay higher wages, they weather recessions better, they hire more, and so this is all something that we can learn from. When we bring this a little closer to home, to South Carolina, 20%, I've seen some figures more recently that in more recent times that figure is actually even higher. The jobs that we have in the state are related to international activity. Certainly in the upstate, we see that could be even stronger. Here, in the past few years, what we've seen is that 68% of our capital announcements, the amount of money companies invest, and nearly half the jobs that are created here have to do with companies who are involved in export activity and international business. So you start thinking about that and you think, okay, well, some of this has happened on purpose, and some of this we haven't really paid a lot of attention to. We seem to like it, we seem to be good at it, but what does it mean? So how do we make sure that we understand what this activity is and that we capture our share of this growth going forward? And what we have come to the conclusion is by developing and committing now as a region to a comprehensive global engagement strategy. And this is the sort of thing that Brookings is going to help us with. We've always had a certain element of international recruitment involved in the Upstate Alliance's strategic plan, but most of that relates to just going overseas and finding new companies and bringing them here. And that strategy has worked. But going forward, there aren't going to be as many companies to bring over here. And the way that we go about doing it, I mean, a company that comes from overseas and has to start from scratch, buy a greenfield site, invest money in bricks and mortar, bring an entire new operation of equipment over here and train, that's just becoming a very expensive model. And it's going to happen. It's certainly going to happen. But there are other things that are starting to happen that go along with that. What about expansions related to export sales here? What about companies who are already here who, with a little bit of encouragement, could double their growth and employment base just because they're now doing business with people overseas that they weren't doing business with before? That's something that we haven't really addressed as an organization. nor merger and acquisitions type strategies. When you think about companies overseas, a lot of times what we hear when we approach companies overseas, they'll say, well, you know, if I could come to the upstate, if there's somebody there who's open to a merger or acquisition, if I could just buy an existing operation, I could expand my footprint so much better, and I could invest capital in that area, but I need to hit the ground running. Same is true here. We may have companies who go overseas and do that. That's not part of our operating strategy right now, but we get asked that a lot, and it's a tool that we could use to our benefit, especially if we're doing that before other regions are comfortable doing that, and we have a way to kind of facilitate those exchanges. So this program with the Brookings Institution started out as kind of a way to help some cities with an export plan to just try to figure out, if we know all this stuff is true about growing your market through foreign direct investment, is there a way that we can kind of encourage that? And what do we need to do that? So it started out as a plan with several cities, and you see different colored dots on the map here. It's grown to a few more cities, because what happens is they kind of realize as they go along that there was more needed. First, it started out thinking about just as an export plan, and then they started thinking about the assessment that was needed, and then they started thinking about, once you have some of this, what are the strategies that work? What are the ones that they've seen that don't work? So now we're up to 20 cities, and the last group of 8 is the group that we were chosen into. And gradually the name of the program and the scope of the program has changed. It started out as it didn't start out as a global city, it was like a metropolitan export plan, and then it was something else, and now it's grown into the Global Cities Initiative. So along with these 20 cities, which if you notice, they're a pretty good company that we're in, the next phase of this will probably look overseas and maybe even grab some cities from overseas. And they'll start matching you up with cities that do what you do in other places. There's some places that are really, really known for their financial expertise. New York, London, Tokyo, places where they're financial centers. Some places are trade centers where, the LA ports there where they bring stuff in and China. And there's certain cities that match up well there. So we'll gradually learn what this is as we go along and work with these places. So without spending a lot of time on this slide, as Mayor Danner said, it's going to be a 4-year process, and it's going to involve several distinctive parts. And all this is laid out by Brookings based on their knowledge and their information. And let me say, if it weren't for something like this, the nice thing about this is it's free. It might cost us a couple of plane trips to Washington, D.C. It's already budgeted for in our budget. But if we hired somebody to come in as a consultant, you all work with consultants, you know how that is. You have to have some of that expertise, but it costs. And it could easily cost over $100,000 to get a study like this done for us by a consultant. And the other thing the consultant wouldn't do was he wouldn't provide you or she with a peer network of other places that were going through the same thing you were going through that you could call and say, so how did this work for you? So how did it do so well for us? We tried that and it might work for you. We'll have that because we'll be going through this process with these other cities at the same time. So we will meet them. We will understand who the people are that are our counterparts in those places. And so even during this 4-year process, once it's over, we'll have people we can reach out to from time to time when we need guidance and maybe better understand this. But the first thing, obviously, we've got to do is we've got to assess what we've already got. And one of the easiest ways to understand what that is if we didn't have the inland port. And we all already have taken that for granted because we had that. But that might show up on an assessment of something. If you were trying to recruit more companies from overseas here, this is a vehicle that would help you do that you could use. And it might help us put all that together. We already have that now. We figured that part out. So what are other things like that could be missing from the upstate that if we had them would facilitate trade even more? What are things that we have that we don't know about? There's things, what we're finding out is that there are companies who are here, there are companies who are ready to export who may already provide some sort of small item to BMW or somebody. What if they could also be encouraged to provide that to somebody else overseas? So this will help us go through that, and over a series of 4 years, there will be a way of assessing what's here, figuring out a strategy and implementing it, and then going back and reassessing it. And at the end of that time, we'll have a world-class strategy. We'll probably have already implemented parts of it. It will be paying dividends. And we'll have a little more direct, intentional pursuit of this international strategy rather than just, it's great, let's keep it going, and trying to figure that out. As the mayor alluded to, Elizabeth Feather from our office is involved in this. She's the one who got us into it. She's been a big Brookings fan all along. And she has picked some number crunchers and people with her for her core team that are used to this sort of stuff, that have seen this kind of thing. And don't sell yourself short. I mean, obviously as a banker here and also having to deal with city budgets and things like that, these are the sorts of things we need people to know on the core team to be able to help us with. State representation, regional representation, port representation, government representation, and educational representation. So we can kind of go, what kind of educational program should we be offering if we're going to encourage this? Are there any export classes that we ought to be teaching to companies or students in this area? But in addition to that team, which is just one team, there will be places for other people to plug in, and we want that to happen. So whether you're a public official or whether you own one of these companies or work for one of these companies, there's a place for you here, and we want everyone to participate to the degree that they're comfortable and that they're encouraged and invited to. Let me just speed on through some of this. We have a website that's part of our website, a little microsite that's called /Go Global. And on that site we have printed information that summarizes the plan, how we got in it and what it is, who's on it, progress, timelines as things progress. Elizabeth was in Abbeville today interviewing one of the international companies that we're trying to interview like 100 companies before May, so that we'll have enough information to really make something useful happen about this. But the other thing I would encourage you to do is one of the first chances to really learn about this is at the Upstate Alliance's annual lunch coming up on 26th of March. We've never done a program like this before. It's always just usually, board members who get together and transact business. But since we're involved in this program, we felt like this was a really good time to help us figure some things out and roll it out to the public. So the fellow who actually started the Metropolitan Policy Program for Brookings is going to come here and speak. He's a very good speaker. I've heard him. I've read his book. He's got a book out right now called The Metropolitan Revolution. And it's the message that he gives out is, if you're waiting for the federal government to come save you, you're going to die. If you're waiting for the state government to help bail you out of this, it's not going to work. Basically, the economy is reinventing itself at the metropolitan level. And those metros that learn to work together and figure out what it is they've got that's unique are going to be the ones that come out on top. And what he calls it is collaboration to compete. Collaborate to compete. And he's going to come and talk to us about that, about maybe what our unique strategies could be in that, and how the things that used to make cities, actually even what the definition of a city is changing from what it used to be, and how the message that we've been talking about for 14 years is right on target. So I would encourage all of you to come to see that. We have a website, Upstate SC Alliance annual meeting.com, that you can go to and get information about attending. But certainly this is going to be a very exciting presentation, and you'll learn a lot there. I can guarantee you that. I'll take any questions, if there are any.
Council, any questions of Clay? Clay, we appreciate the overview and the insight, and look forward to working with you as we move forward on this project.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
With that, we want to move to a presentation by Chief Dan Reynolds. Chief Reynolds is the Chief of Police, and this is his opportunity to give his annual report this evening. And so with that, we are going to turn the floor over to Chief Reynolds.
I assure you, we have no intention of exporting our services outside. Other than the criminals we would like to export outside. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Greer, I'd like to take this opportunity to provide you with a report of what we did last year and also to give you some idea of what we plan for in the next year. We're going to present a condensed version of the report. You've got a written report you're going to receive later that's more extensive. And again, this is the Reader's Digest version of that report. I will use members of staff to discuss their divisions and what they're doing and what they have as goals in the future. We also have a volunteer that will also speak about that program. The mission of our department is to provide quality services in partnership with the community to ensure safe and secure neighborhoods. Understanding full well that we're a community policing operation, and we also involve ourselves in the strategy called problem solving. We must work with the community in partnership to provide the best quality service to our constituents. As far as our accomplishments and some of the things we plan to do next year, when you see the overheads and get your report, you'll see some items highlighted in yellow. All those items refer to our strategic plan efforts. First thing on the agenda here, we completed our social intelligence or effective communications 40-hour course with all our employees, and we also provided that to some of the other city employees. We received the results from the COP assessments recently, and we shared that with our staff. Periodically, we do assessments through the COPS office to determine how well we're doing with our community policing efforts. We completed a narrow banding of the department's radios, installation of the report, writing in-car capabilities. We've completed that this year. We upstate law enforcement memorial tournament was conducted again this year, and we raised $3,000 for that. Completed purchase of equipment for drug testing, and marijuana testing, as well as mitigation equipment for a meth operation. We also reestablished the area assignments, assigning sergeants to particular areas of the city to meet with residents. As far as 2014, we're going to be installing air cards in our vehicles. They no longer make modems for our radios, so we have to install air cards, and that's a budget issue. We will continue the school security and active shooting training, which we did a lot of that this year, and met with school officials to advise them on security efforts, and also allow our officers to become familiar with the different schools and their policies. We're going to purchase body cameras for each of the officers, as a lot of different departments throughout the nation are doing. We have a comprehensive driver safety program. This year, we experienced an increase in some of the officers involved accidents. We noted it. We analyzed what was going on. We think we identified what the problem was, and we've been quite successful with the program we've adopted that included policy changes, how we respond to calls, training, and we also had a couple of officers that they'll explain later that will provide training to all the employees of the city that drive vehicles. And the last thing, and important thing on our agenda for next year is to find somebody to fill the positions that are being vacated by Captain Van Seal. She's done an outstanding job since she's been here. We're going to miss her. Mr. Griffin, you're certainly going to miss her. And I'd like to introduce her. She'll be right here.
Hi, Jolene Van Seal, Captain of the Police Department. I oversee the Office of Professional Standards. Among the many jobs that are done are the four that you see here, which is grants, general orders, updates, use of control monitoring, and internal investigations. Just briefly over the grants, in 2003 we completed the COPS grant, which helped pay for 3 officers. We received $104,500 on that grant, And we also continued our memo of understanding with the Greenville schools, which provide 3 school resource officers at $150,000 a year, for a total of $254,500. As far as our use of control techniques, you can see it's broken down there. We broke it down by discharge of firearm, pointing a firearm, deploying of a taser, pointing a taser, and the use of hands and feet. In 2013, there were 38 use of control techniques reported. This was down from 46 in 2012 for a 17% reduction. And if you'll see with the discharge of a firearm, there were 3 incidents of discharging a firearm. 2 were to destroy injured animals, and 1 discharge was to stop a suspect who came charging at the officers from a barricaded situation, pointing a firearm at them, forcing them to have to return. He did not fire, but they did. They were forced to use their weapons. The subject did survive the incident, and SLED was called in and cleared the officers of any wrongdoings. You'll basically see that the major thing that we had was the pointing of a firearm at 15. The reason that looks like it's higher is that we decided that we started documenting and reporting all pointing of firearms, so that became higher only because it's a new thing that we started reporting. And now I'll introduce Lieutenant Martin.
For the record, I don't think no one person can replace you.
I agree with you. Like Captain said, I'm Chris Varner. I'm in the Uniform Patrol Division. Currently we're broken down into 4 different shifts. We have 2 permanent day shifts and 2 permanent night shifts. And the chief brought up earlier that we've gone back to area assignments, which makes a sergeant more responsible for an area. They're still over the city as a whole when they're on duty, but they have certain projects that they're going to be working on over the course of the year in their own areas. As you see, Sergeant Fortenberry's in Area 1, Sergeant Ayler's in Area 2, Sergeant Eldridge in Area 3, and Sergeant Smith in Area 4. And they'll be glad to talk to you anytime. Just call and get in touch with them, any problems or concerns that you have. They'll be glad to work with you. Like Chief mentioned, we're going to look at body cameras. It's taken us just about a year to review different types of body cameras because they're an up-and-coming thing. So to get a T&E model, you have to be put on a waiting list. And it's either that or they'll be glad to sell you one that you can keep, but if you don't like it, you're just stuck with it. So it's taken us a while. We've tried some that you wear on your head, some on your shoulder, and some on your chest. And we've looked at quality, we looked at, of course, cost and ease of use, and the storage of the actual evidence that's on there. And the first part of this year, we're going to go ahead and purchase a few to put out and just expand the experiment a little bit more. We've done one from several different companies and use the same officer on each one just so you have a consistent trial with it. And the numbers from 12 to 13 for the Uniform Patrol Division, we had an uptick in tickets, which is citations, which is also traffic and criminal citations. In late 2011, 2012, we lost a lot of officers to your general attrition and also to retirement. And it takes almost a year for officers to get out, go to the academy, get out on their own, and then get comfortable doing their jobs. So that showed a general uptick in citations. The accomplishments for 2013, the officers monitored the elementary schools because of the issues that we're having around the country. We became familiar with some of the staff that had changed in elementary schools, and also with our newer officers, they got familiar with them also. And they also looked at the school plans, and some of our officers worked with the school districts and the individual schools to tweak their plans a little bit and make us more familiar with what they would be doing. We also worked with the village at Pelham and conducted a live active shooter scenario that included the patrol division, the ERT, and the security out at the hospital. It was about a half-a-day scenario that we did, and then we went in and critiqued everything that went on. After that, we've had a couple of meetings since then just to continue to check on the things we can improve on. And objectives for 2014. Training officers on problem solving, like the chief was talking about. We're getting the newer officers more involved in the problem solving process, so we're going to be teaching them different techniques to use. and we're going to increase the officer input on the police intel site. And now that we're almost back to full staff, we're going to reestablish a directed patrol unit, and we're doing installation of traffic reporting computers inside the cars that are coming from the state, which will allow the officers to enter all the information from an accident while they're in the car. It'll print out a sheet to hand to the persons that were involved in the accident, and that way you don't have to print a copy of the actual accident report unless it's requested by the insurance company, or saying they can go on and pull it offline. I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Eric Presley.
I am Eric Presley, and I'm responsible for the Criminal Investigations Division. Of the 348 cases that were assigned to detectives in 2013, we were able to successfully clear 20% of our property crimes, and a very good 68% of our crimes against person. Methamphetamine has emerged as a major drug of choice over the past couple of years, and it's really beginning to change the way that we have to address drug culture. What we're also finding is that it's a significant force behind many of the crime patterns that we're seeing. In response to that, our vice team participates in task forces in both Greenville and Spartanburg counties. The benefit of that is obviously the pooling of resources, of equipment and manpower. We track the purchase of pseudoephedrine products by those that we know to manufacture methamphetamine and try to intercept that prior to the final product being made. We're also training and equipping our officers in order to safely dismantle active meth labs. What you see here down at the bottom is some of the equipment that's required for officers to go in and take care of some of these labs. That's a full hazmat suit with an SCBA. And above that is a trailer that we've purchased that's going to help us carry around all the equipment that's required to take care of these issues. Goals and objectives for 2014, we want to continue case management through offender targeting. We want to partner with probation and parole to build violation cases against repeat offenders. We want to continue to build our in-office repeat offender database. We also want to employ an offender analysis to assist with proper sentencing in both city court and general sessions court. We want to reduce the clerical duties of our crime analyst, and we've already started to do that by the hiring of a part-time CID clerk. We also want to continue our methamphetamine enforcement. To do that, we need to finalize the needed equipment and personnel for meth lab responses, and we also want to begin to factor in additional personnel that are assigned to that meth and addiction. Our emergency response team now has 22 total members, and we divide those up into 3 separate elements. We've added a tactical EMT to the team, and we've also purchased needed medical equipment for all of our team members. We've increased the size of our negotiation element to 5, and we've added a throw phone system into that. As Chris said, we participated in the active shooter exercise at the village of Pelham. That was with us and the ERT and patrol and the folks out there at the village. And lastly, we want to continue to be able to upgrade our active shooter response. With that said, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Again, my name is Matt Hamby, and I'm with the Operational Support Division here at the Greer Police Department. That consists of the detention center, telecommunications, records and data entry, animal control, property and evidence, processing our drug forfeiture funds, and record regulation enforcement. The telecommunications section is responsible for answering emergency 911 calls, non-emergency incoming calls, and also the radio communication to the police and fire departments. During 2013, our dispatch police calls increased by almost 12%. I won't go through all the rest of the numbers, but that's the highlight on that slide. The detention section is responsible for the intake, detainment, and release of those persons who are charged with crimes in the city of Greer. The city of Greer's detention facility is categorized as a Type 1 facility by the Department of Corrections, which is approved to house male inmates for a maximum of 48 hours. We can keep females for 6 hours. I would like to
direct your attention to the bottom right number, it's a 94% decrease. And that is in regards to the number of hours that the patrol division had to help man the jail or cover the jail as compared to 2012. The reason that number is so large is that's a result of the additional position that was approved by council in the 2012-13 budget. So we put it to good use. Property evidence section consists of one officer. She's responsible for the intake, tracking, transportation of, and disposition of all property evidence seized by Greer police officers. During 2013, there were 1,489 items that were transacted through the evidence facility. Also during 2013, we purchased lab equipment which will be used beginning 2014 to do all of the marijuana testing for court. We'll do that in-house instead of going to the county facilities for that. 2014 goals for our division: we would like to renovate a portion of our detention facility so that we can create an additional holding room, which will greatly assist our process during court days here. We will, as I mentioned earlier, we will begin marijuana testing in our new lab, develop a plan to improve the animal control facility, and also train our detention officers so that they can assist with prisoner transfer on court dates. With that, I'll turn it over to Lieutenant Holcomb.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Lieutenant Jim Holcomb. I'm in charge of Administrative Support Division over Personnel, Community Outreach and Training. During 2013, we loved on our officers. The Supervisor of the Year was Sergeant Patrick Fortenberry. Officer of the Year was Detective Jason Bash. Rookie of the Year, Jonathan McWhite. And the Civilian of the Year was Penny Ellis. Two programs that we're very proud of is the Citizens Police Academy and the Alumni Association that came off of the academy. We still conduct 2 classes a year in the spring and in the fall of the Citizens Police Academy. What we did, we decided that we needed to keep in touch with the people that graduated from the academy, so we started the Alumni Association about 3 years ago, and it's grown to where we have 20 active members, 20 plus now, in the Alumni Association. What I'd like to do now is have Dale Hawley, one of our Alumni Association members, come up and tell you about it.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I want to apologize for my voice. I decided to catch a head cold this evening, of course. But good evening. My name is Dale Hawley. I'm the volunteer coordinator for the Greer Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association. I graduated from the fall of 2012. Our mission statement is to produce a thriving, self-sustaining alumni with goals and responsibilities giving back to our community, working side by side with officers and through continued support of our officers. As the Lieutenant said, we conduct 2 10-week classes of the Citizen Police Academy each year in the spring and fall. The current class began on February 20th with approximately 20 students. Alumni volunteers assist at all events held within the city of Greer. Our duties vary greatly, from assisting officers with parking, traffic flow security, to finding lost parents. All volunteers are aware that we represent the city while performing our assigned duties. In effect, we are ambassadors for the city of Greer to the visiting public. At these occasions, several people have asked if I am an officer, and after saying no, I explain that I'm a police department volunteer. There have been a few people who have questioned why we volunteer, and the simple and honest answer is to give back to our community, showing a cohesive relationship with the police department, and to enhance our city's reputation as a great place to live, work, and play. Since becoming an alumni volunteer, I have assisted at many events. My duties have included selling tickets or wristbands for food, drink, and rides, checking parking permits, helping with security at moving in the park, and safeguarding Santa Claus during the annual City of Greer Christmas tree lighting. My favorite assignment by far is helping with Cops for Tots. I have really enjoyed being part of the community-sponsored event, made possible by the hard work of many police officers and volunteers. The amount of time and effort spent raising funds, shopping for toys, and setting up large displays of age and gender-specific toys is rewarded many times over by seeing the absolute joy and wide-eyed excitement of each of the children as he or she picks out his or her special Christmas gifts. Not only does this event make Christmas special for them, but also for all the adults who make it happen. The Alumni Volunteers' next project is to start a large food drive to benefit the Greer Community Ministries. We will be announcing this at our next meeting, which will be in March, and we will then distribute the food in May. Our alumni volunteers contributed 724.2 hours of their time, giving back to the community in 2013. This number represents a 44% increase compared to 2012. We anticipate that 2014 will continue to show a sizable increase in the total number of hours donated by volunteers. While there may very well be a formula to calculate the financial benefit from all these donated hours to the city, we alumni do not think in terms of money, but rather in the satisfaction knowing we are helping to make our city the best it can be. Speaking for all the alumni, I would like to thank Chief Reynolds, Lieutenant Holcomb, and all the officers for their continued support of our association. We would like to invite all of you to attend any of our classes or one of our alumni meetings. The classes meet every Thursday evening from 6:30 to 8:30. They will meet for the next 9 Thursdays, with the last Thursday, April 24th, being graduation. Our next alumni meeting is March 18th at 6:30 p.m. These are held in the Police Department training room. In closing, on behalf of all the volunteers, I would also like to thank all the city employees for what they do each day to keep our city safe and a great place to live. Thank you very much.
That's the reason we have the Alumni Association Citizen Cabinet, have someone like that become part of our department. He is a citizen of Greer, he's a veteran, and now he's our volunteer coordinator, and he does a great job for us. The Administrative Support Division, is also responsible for the Community Outreach Division. Sergeant Chad Richardson is in charge of that. He serves on the Planning Advisory Committee. He aids with the security at Family Fest, Oktoberfest, and the Barbecue Festival. He provides tours and information on law enforcement for school groups, Boy Scout and Girl Scout groups, and he serves on the Junior Leadership Board. Chad also started 3 new neighborhood watch programs this past year in the Mount Vernon area, Starcrest, and O'Neill Village. With the assistance of Professional Pharmacy, we were able to purchase a drug drop-off box. We've been doing the drug take-back now for a couple of years, where we go out to the pharmacies and they pick up drugs. We started the first year, we got 600-700 pounds of drugs. This past year we got 235 pounds, and now we have a box where they can come into the lobby of the police department and drop off the drugs. Community service workers, we are expanding that program to start the Saturday roadside trash program, where they're going to get out there and clean the streets anywhere, the neighborhoods in the city of Greer. National Night Out was a success. We partnered with the rec department, and we were at Needmore this past year and had a huge turnout. They were very proactive with the National Night Out. The rec department was providing stickers and face stickers and stuff like that, and the community really responded and showed and came out. They also were at the Oakland Place Apartments. We had a good turnout there. Starting a landlord notification program where we're notifying landlords of problem tenants, also sending them reports of any type of incident that happened on their property, where they're well aware of what's going on and they can't say we didn't know, and hopefully we can keep moving them out towards other cities. We are also responsible for the training division. Sergeant Forrester is responsible for that. In 2013, we had 98 classes. We had 1,859 students trained with over 10,000 training hours. The estimated economic impact for the city of Greer was $18,930. We did active shooter training at Riverside High School. We did an 8-hour class where they did classroom activity, and then they went out to Riverside High School and actually did several different scenarios out there. And as the chief mentioned, our firearms range was completed throughout the year. There's still some minor things that we'd like to do out there, but we began training in April, and from April to December we had 152 students with 1,381 hours of training out there. The other part, we'd like to thank Public Services and Parks and Rec for providing us manpower, equipment. Anytime we asked them for anything, they were there to help us. Great effort by everybody. And here's a little video to show the training range, hopefully.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do when Satan don't come for you? Tell me what you gonna do.
This facility is really a great place for us to be able to go to and fire several different weapon systems, from tasers to handguns to rifles, patrol rifles, and our sniper rifles that we have for ERT. And it's let us have versatile training up there, and it's also a place where we can go whenever we need to and not have to reserve the location at Greenville County or Greenville City and use their ranges. It's also able to allow us to bring in other agencies and allow them to come over and join in the training that we are putting on, and have our own classes from different academy classes and also our own training classes that we're going to have.
Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you?
The cost of the range, when we initially got quotes on it, we were in the range of $140,000 for the quotes to get the type of range that we have now. And so far we've spent just over $20,000 in order to get the range to where it is, which is a pretty remarkable thing. The money that we spent on the range has come from the seized funds that we've had, and that's allowed us to get the range to where it is at this point.
On behalf of everyone at the police department, I just want to say thank you to all the people that helped make our range possible, particularly Parks and Rec and City Services, for truly making it a Team Greer project. Thank you.
As the chief mentioned earlier, we started a driver's training program. We sent Sergeant Ballinger and Corporal Wilson to Charlotte to attend a AAA driver's training instructor, and they've come back with a new program that we're going to start during the summer, where we're going to train not only the police officers but all city employees. They're able to go to this training. It will benefit them in several ways. Hopefully get a little bit of safety training in there, and also should help with their insurance. Chief?
Of course, the bottom line for everything is try to maintain this as safe neighborhoods and safe city for all to live, work, and play. We seem to have been doing that, Even with the increase in population that we've experienced over the last 6 to 8 years, we've been able to maintain a stable crime rate at the rate you see there. Both our violent crime and property crimes, with the exception of 1 year there, I don't know what happened, spiked, have stayed pretty stable. This year, based on estimates we've made so far, the official reports haven't come out yet, but we did get a report from the state. We're 3 incidents below what we were last year. Again, with all the development and all the potential victims out there, I think that's a pretty good job. You can understand by the outstanding leadership we have and the people that are here employed by this department and all the departments that help us accomplish our goal. And with your help, with the money and the support that we get from council, the mayor, and Mr. Drigger's leadership, I think we've done an excellent job. We've faced a lot of challenges. Our officers have been exposed to a couple of very violent incidents, and everybody's come out all right. There's a number of hostage negotiations that we've gone through. One from the target, a man with a gun that wanted to kill himself. We're able to talk him out of the car without any incident. So far, every ERT call out we've had, nobody's been injured. I think that's a heck of an accomplishment. Couldn't say that from where I came from. It's a little more violent from here. But anyway, that's my report for this year. Again, you'll get a more comprehensive report in the mail. Tammy, I guess we'll send it to you, get you a copy. I also wanted to, Mr. Driggers has mentioned that he would brief you every year on condemned funds and what we use the money for. The major account we have is the IRS funds. We have other funds, but they're insignificant in terms of the amounts. And you wanted to know what we spend the money on. When we started 2013, or fiscal year 2012-13, we started out with $1,461,381.85. With the expenditures we had, we spent about $234,000, $235,000 during the year on such things as network storage unit. That's the biggest cost right there. That was like $86,000. We shared the expense with the city for our portion of it. That primarily the storage is going to be for the videotapes. That takes a lot of space to store those, and in anticipation of body cameras that we're going to get. Training, we spent about $59,000. A big portion of that was for our social intel, our communications, effective communications training through consultant Dr. Sampson, who's nationally and internationally known in that area. ERT and narcotics. We bought sniper rifles, night vision, scope, ammo, and ERT vests, which cost several $1,000s for the vest. We spent about $3,000 for building improvements. That's for painting, some jail renovation, and then for the lights, the lighting within the area that the police department has. We spent about $2,000 in community outreach, Citizens Academy. Every year, in the last 2 years, we send our volunteers off to the National Citizens Police Academy Conference. We pay their expenses to go there. I mean, it is well worth it. This year, we're thinking about giving another 10% pay raise. Right? 10% of nothing is nothing, but at least that's the least we can do for the people and what they do for us, for the hours that they spend with us. We donated $10,000 to the First Responder Memorial Fund in Spartanburg for those officers and firefighters who have died in the line of duty. Which is part of recommended expenditures in this particular fund. Range upgrade, about $12,000 this year. As the sergeant said, Sergeant Forrester, we spent about $23,000 on the range. And what he said earlier is we got an architect or somebody to give us a quote on how much it would cost to build. That was $147,000 through efforts of Park and Rec, Public Works, several citizens in the community provided materials, equipment, and labor. We were able to cut it down to $23,000, which I think that's pretty good. And then we put a small shelter out there to store some of the targets, and we've got a couple more things we want to do. And then the detention evidence and drug lab cost us about $13,000, and we also had to buy a trailer and meth mitigation equipment for our officers to protect them from that hazard. Typically a fire responsibility, now police responsibility. And we work with both counties on meth mitigation. It's become a very serious problem in this community. And now what we hear is heroin will be the next drug of choice because of the cost of prescription drugs. Questions?
Council, questions of the chief? His department? Comments?
That concludes my presentation.
Chief, thank you. We'll look forward to getting the full report, and to you and your officers, as always, thank you for what you do for us and for the city. We appreciate all that you do, and appreciate your report as well too. With that, then we'll move to the administrator's report. Mr. Driggers.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of council, if you ever wonder why we try to update your photographs each year, you'll notice the cutout that they use out at the firing range. We change that periodically. But they have grown to favor that one of me for some reason. So, obviously just kidding. Couple of things we do want to make sure that we're updating you on from a calendar perspective. We're going to have a very busy week together. As you have set aside time, we will be together all day and into the evening on Thursday of this week, and we will be together all day on Friday as well. There are a number of topics that we are scheduled to cover. We will gather about 8:15 on Thursday morning, and we will roll into our sessions promptly no later than 8:30. And I can assure you we will be exhausted by the end of our evening, which should conclude probably around 8 or 8:30 or so that evening. We will regather again on Friday morning at the exact same time. Consistency seems to help us arrive and get things done, but we will do that as well. As we have in years past, you will be meeting with our staff during the day on Thursday, and we'll be spending time with our staff on Thursday evening. Our staff will be with us as we're concluding the program on Friday morning and through midday, and then at the conclusion of our lunch program, our session on Friday at lunch, our staff will be excused, and you will then go into an executive session on Friday afternoon, where we will be discussing some topics that certainly qualify under executive session, but they'll be primarily relative to some of our personnel issues, some of our changes. We mentioned earlier tonight we have a retirement happening in our police department. I want to brief you on our process involved in that retirement and how we're moving forward in that selection process. As well as some other items of interest to you, particularly relative to personnel issues, but we'll also cover some economic development matters, some contractual issues as well. So it will be a very productive but a very busy retreat again for you. We will be gathering in this room on again Thursday morning, and we will stay here through the duration of that meeting, except while we just wander down the hall to have a little bit of lunch or dinner or that type of thing. So again, it'll be a very, very busy time. We thank you for setting aside and committing to that, and we'll, if you have questions specific to that, I'll be glad to answer those. The format will run very similar to years past, but do not be disappointed that we have brought back out the dots this year, and so there'll be an opportunity for you to set some priorities, and we'll be doing that through an exercise on Friday as well. So again, it's a process that we're familiar with. It's been very productive for us, but obviously we'll be looking at some of the things that we've been able to accomplish, but our time will be primarily concentrated on us receiving from you and understanding those items that are priorities as we go into the next year and beyond, so that as we begin to work on our budgets, we understand those processes and those priorities that you feel are important, as well as us doing that in the budget. It allows us to update our comprehensive plan as well as our strategic plan. So it's all part of that process, and we thank you for your continued commitment to help make that happen. A couple of other things that are a little fun. If we haven't completely worn you out between Thursday and Friday, please know that the Cultural Arts Council through the Greer Children's Theater will be doing their second weekend of the children's production of Tarzan. That is being held down at the Cannon Center. I have not had the opportunity to get there yet. I will be going this Sunday afternoon. But I hear it is a remarkable job that those young people are doing for that production. I have heard many comments from folks that the quality of the productions continues to grow and grow year after year, and we are glad to be associated with Greer Cultural Arts and the Children's Theater and the things that are being accomplished there. So if you haven't had the opportunity, they'll be there Friday night, they'll be there again on Saturday evening and on Sunday afternoon. If we can assist you with any part of that, please let us know. Again this year, our Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring the Public Safety Officers Recognition for our police, firefighters, and also our ambulance and EMT medic folks in our community. Our Chamber of Commerce will be sponsoring that again this year. That will be on Thursday evening, March the 27th. That is a highlight for our folks involved in public safety each year. I hope that your schedule will allow you to participate. That is 100% underwritten by our local Chamber of Commerce, and they invite our folks to come in and participate that, obviously at no cost. They get underwriting for that entire program as a way of saying thank you to our public safety personnel here in the city. If you're not familiar, we will be hosting and participating in our what we would refer to as our inaugural International Festival. That will be taking place on Saturday, March the 29th. There will be more information forthcoming on that, but we want to make sure that you put a placehold on that Saturday as our Parks and Recreation Department continues to plan and organize and prepare for an international festival here in our community. I remind you that as of the end of the month as well, for the end of March, your statement of economic interest will be due. That's about 2 weeks earlier than in years past, and we're a little concerned that folks may be taken a little bit off guard by that, but do know that by the end of the month of March, we'll continue to remind you, but your statement of economic interest, what's commonly referred to as your state ethics reports, those are due by month end for March. Wanted to also make you aware of our participation during the recent storm event. As the mayor mentioned earlier, I cannot say enough good things about our staff. As you well know, yes, it was necessary for us to either close or delay operations of some of our public spaces, but when there is an emergency event or an inclement weather event, many, about 2/3 of our workforce do not have the opportunity to use that as a snow day or as an inclement weather day. Our emergency personnel, police, fire, and particularly our crews in public services, those involved in road clearing, those employees are expected, and they do report to work as scheduled. To give you a little idea of some of the participation that took place during that, relative to our streets, we traveled by plowing and sanding 1,285 miles of city and state and county streets within our municipality. We recognize that effort we can't do that only on our city streets, but within the boundaries of our municipality, state roads, county roads, and city roads, for the accessibility of our citizens, we plowed or sanded 1,285 miles of those streets. We used approximately 50 tons of sand during that event a couple of weeks ago. 319 hours of overtime was necessary for us in addition to our normal schedules, but we had that occur with all of our staff in our Public Services Department, and again, all of our folks on police and fire reporting as usual. Over at the fire department side, we're pleased to report that we really only had one motor vehicle accident that was directly related to the weather event, and that actually involved one of our residents that was enjoying the fun. They were on a sled and they slid out into a street and they were struck by a vehicle. We're actually very glad to report that it was a minor injury, but a very scary one, both for those folks involved and our staff needing to respond to that. On the police side, we really were pretty minor. We had a total of 126 calls of service during that two-day event with the storm. That was about less than half of our normal call volume. And a lot of that is because folks stayed home. They heeded the recommendations to stay off the roads and away from that weather. We had one collision that was involved with minor injuries. We had 5 minor collisions with no injuries. We had 7 stranded vehicles and 4 abandoned vehicles during that period as well. So while we encouraged our community to stay home and off the streets, they did a good job of that, but our personnel were there protecting and providing for access on our streets once the weather started to clear. Again, I cannot say enough good things about our staff that helped make this a safe community, but they also made this a very noticeably improved community that when you entered into the city of Greer, you could tell you had gone from one jurisdiction to another. And I know, Mr. Airwood, you and I talked about that.
That's right, and I'd like to say a public thanks to Skipper Burns and all his staff. I visited with them at the Operations Center when they were, some of them were taking a lunch break, but I have a gentleman that works with me who lives on the other side of Spartanburg, and this was not coerced out of him. He showed up at the office and he said you could tell the difference when you came into Greer and the conditions of the roads from Wayhampton Boulevard to the side streets getting here to downtown to our office. So they did a super job.
Absolutely. Police officers serving on 12-hour shifts, firefighters on 24-hour shift, and our staff in public services also rotating on a 24-hour basis. They stayed at the shop. Those personnel came in and literally camped with us through the duration. We provided sleeping accommodations and arrangements for them there at the shop. And then, of course, we made arrangements to make sure all of our staff were fed during that event. What you may not realize is that when a town completely shuts down, so do all of its restaurants. And when you have staff that are out there 24 hours a day, one of the things that we recognized very quickly is that we needed to make sure that we were providing for our employees that were out there. And so I realized very quickly what my number one role needed to be, and that was to get them fed. And I want to give public recognition to a partner here in our community that came through for us with glowing colors. I mean, it was amazing how they worked with us, and that is Greer Memorial Hospital. I made a direct phone call to the president of Greer Memorial Hospital, John Mansour. I explained to John what our circumstances were, that we had staff, we had no places that we could get them fed, and he made arrangements at the hospital for our staff to come in on a regular basis throughout that storm event, and they fed all of our personnel at each of the meals that we needed to be fed during that event. So when you see really John Mansour and those folks from Greer Memorial Hospital and the staff that's there, we would like to do an additional recognition for them, and we'll make some recommendations on how we may do that moving forward. But I certainly wanted to make sure that you were aware of that tonight, that they came through as a true partner for us in that event, because we recognized they were going to continue serving meals in that facility, whereas we could not make other accommodations, other arrangements. They stepped up and made sure that we were taken care of, and they did that gladly. So great partner here in the community, and we were glad to be able to partner with them. In closing for my report, I have been asked by council and individual members of council to assess some of our community reaction and think the general operation and how things are going with the opening of the South Carolina Inland Port. Those folks are up and operating, and things are going well for them as they're continuing to move cargo in and cargo out. As any new operation would, they are having some logistical adjustments that they're needing to make as part of their processes. Specifically, what I was asked about is whether or not we are getting any issues or concerns that are being expressed through our community, and there have been some of those. And what we are trying to do, those items that are specific to the South Carolina State Ports Authority for the operation of the South Carolina Inland Port, we are trying to direct those issues or concerns directly to the ports folks. If they are issues relative to train traffic, then that is more specific to Norfolk Southern, and we are directing those issues or concerns directly to Norfolk Southern. And if it's concerning truck traffic, those types of issues, either we are addressing that with the ports staff here on site at the terminal, and more specifically working with the trucking companies that are serving that area as well, and then communicating that with the South Carolina Department of Transportation. The types of concerns and issues that have been expressed to us has been in the reconstruction and the landscaping area there along Moore Street. Many of the residents in the Victor community and that surrounding area attended the public workshops and those meetings that were held by the Ports Authority. There have been a few concerns expressed that that landscaping that was installed may be a bit different than what was presented, and there's been some concerns expressed about that. Again, we've asked that those concerns be directed to the Ports Authority. We have reviewed that ourselves, and indeed there were some modifications to some of the plans that were there. Not necessarily that they are better or that they are worse, but they are a little different than what we were anticipating as well. There have been communications by the ports folks that they've asked us and they've asked the community to be patient as that landscaping is developed and as the growing season begins and the greenery is a bit more noticeable. But they've also indicated that if there are adjustments or modifications, improvements or additions that possibly need to be made to that they recognize that could be the case, and that they're very willing to do that as well. We're not speaking, I'm not attempting to speak on behalf of the Ports Authority. I'm simply communicating their response back to us as we've expressed those same concerns. Residents of our community, again, we are directing them to have direct communication and conversation with the folks at the authority. We've had a few questions about that. The lion's share, the part relative to the operations, what's going on there, has been relative to the train traffic. We have noticed some significant changes to the patterns and the delays, particularly on Line Street. We are continuing to communicate that with Norfolk Southern. What they have indicated to us is that those are some logistical concerns as they are scheduling the trains in and out. Again, there are only 2 trains a day that service the port, but there are approximately 50 trains a day that are on that line. Some of the delay that we have seen, they've indicated has been as they've been making some car changes, loading and unloading there within the port site, but others have been relative to other traffic that's there. The primary thing that they've communicated to us has been some of the delays is that as they have continued to work on the rail line through the South Carolina Inland Port, as they've done that, it's required them to switch track. And as they would switch track, as they're working on one track, obviously they're then putting the train traffic on the other. And one of the things that they've indicated to us is that has required that they slow down the trains that are coming through the community because they're switching them over to a secondary track. And that has required some slowdowns and some delays as well. Again, not speaking for Norfolk Southern, I'm simply communicating what they've communicated back to us. But most of the inquiries that we've received from the public has been either stoppages or slower moving trains, particularly relative to Line Street. We are continuing to communicate that with Norfolk Southern, and we are also encouraging the public as they contact us. We're giving them the contact information for Norfolk Southern as well, so that they have that information. That's really, and in truck issues have been very minor for us. We have still not posted our prohibited truck traffic within the city limits. That's partly because we've just received our final permissions, our final permit approvals with SCDOT. But we've not had a lot of issue with rogue trucks, folks just kind of getting off and out in places where we would not want them to be. We've been pretty effective in communicating with the terminal site as well as the trucking companies that they need to stay on the interstates, they need to stay on Wade Hampton Boulevard, Highway 101, Highway 14, and the Vern Smith Parkway. And for the most part, we've had pretty good success with that. But we are moving forward now that we have the permits for the installation of the local signage to get that signage installed. And that's being coordinated by both our engineering department and our public services department. Any questions that you may have relative to that issue, that part of my report?
I've had complaints about the stoppages, and you could tell that those were not the crossing closings were not a result of work on the tracks, because those trains slow down, but they, from however fast they normally go to about half speed. This was these trains were stopped and either moving back towards the port or coming out of the port at a walking pace, and they had all of the grade crossings. I've experienced that, and then other people have come to me with the same issues, and they had all the grade crossings blocked through Greer. And of course they said we would not notice any difference. And then of course you mentioned the community meetings where they presented the conceptual landscape drawing, and I guess that's what they're falling back on. They did indicate that there would be a berm with the land landscaping on the berm to try to help block the view of the trains and maybe deaden some of the sound. And no matter how large the landscaping gets, it's not what they showed the community. And I think that needs to be addressed by the community, and maybe we as the city could say, hey, this is not what you said that you probably would do. What you led our citizens to believe that you were going to do.
And we can certainly do that. We one of the larger challenges as the local municipality where this project has taken place, as we heard earlier, we recognize, we acknowledge that there will be substantial economic impact to upstate South Carolina and to the state of South Carolina as a result of the South Carolina Inland Port. It will be a significant game changer for the state, upstate South Carolina, for Spartanburg County, Greenville County, and for Greer. But as a local community, we have impact issues outside of the economic development impact, and that's simply what we're trying to make sure that we're communicating with them, and they are continuing to be very cooperative with us in agreeing to address issues and concerns. We've not run into any situations where we feel that we've run into roadblocks or stumbling blocks. There have been changes to what we believed we would see or what would happen. There's been some impact, obviously, to the trains, and we're being very, very intentional in addressing those issues. They are assuring us, either through Norfolk Southern or through the Ports Authority, that they are aware and that they're working on those issues and concerns, and that they are continuing to be committed to us as a community to working through those issues. I do think we have a responsibility as the local government closest to their site and to the public that it's impacting, that we stay on top of that. But that's the information that I have at this time, and wanted to share that with all of council. Certainly if there's any instruction or anything that I may be needing to do differently, I'm glad to do that. Okay. With that being said, then, Mr. Mayor, I would also like to ask council's consideration in executive session to consider 2 individual personnel matters, 1 economic development, 1 legal, and 1 contractual. Again, 2 personnel, 1 economic development, 1 legal, and 1 contractual. I am not anticipating any action would be required of council. All of those are for information and update.
Council executive session, we need to consider 2 personnel matters, 1 economic development matter, 1 legal matter, 1 water spill matter, and 1 contractual matter. Sorry about that. At least it wasn't your keyboard.
I know.
Do I hear a motion we adjourn into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council in executive session, we've considered 2 personnel matters, 1 economic development matter, 1 legal matter, and 1 contractual matter. We've taken no action in regards to any of those items. Do I hear a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second?
Have a motion and a second. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Ms. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Dumas?
Yes.
Mr. Bettis?
Yes.
Ms. Albert?
Yes.
Mayor Danner?
Yes. Council, stand adjourned.